All right, everybody. I am super excited to be with you all here today. What an amazing venue we have, right? Really, really cool. By the way, who is excited about vapor mode? Yeah, anybody? I'm really looking forward to that. Okay, I got one hand. Yeah, awesome. Really looking forward to vapor mode. So today I'm going to be talking about some common mistakes that I have seen people make in developing with Vue.js. I am a Vue teacher. I did full-time development work before getting into teaching, but that gives me a first-hand glance into some of the mistakes that juniors and seniors alike make. So I want to show you today how you can avoid some of these same mistakes. As mentioned a moment ago, my name is Daniel Kelly. I am the lead instructor at Vue School, and I'm also a husband and a father of 3 wonderful little kids. Okay, so why this topic? Well, we're all human and we all make mistakes. I think it's just important in the age of AI at this point to really acknowledge, hey, we're human, we're important to this world, and part of what makes us human is we make mistakes, right? The thing is that simple mistakes can sometimes cause really big headaches. One little 2-minute change could save you hours of debugging. So I want to try to save you some of that headache today. And I want to help you learn from the mistakes of other people so that you don't have to make them yourself. And I'm pretty sure there are at least a few people in this audience today that there's going to be a mistake I talk about, and they're going to say, oh, I'm having that issue in my code right now. Thank you so much, Daniel, for showing me what I'm doing wrong. Awesome. So all in all, this is a very practical topic. Okay, so let's dive right in. Mistake number 1. Take a look at that code snippet for just a moment, and go ahead and yell it out. What's the mistake here? Anybody? Awesome. Okay, yeah, we got some really great answers there. We're using the index for the key. I think at this point, all of us have been conditioned by ESLint to say, okay, the key has to be there, right? Unfortunately, the way a lot of people get rid of that little red squiggly line is just by slapping the index in as the value for the key. And you may have actually done this just this week and said, hey, Daniel, there's actually no bug in my code. It's working just fine. How is this an actual mistake? Well, the thing is, the bug itself only manifests itself under these 2 conditions. Okay, condition number 1, when the elements in the array change order. So the thing that you're looping over, those elements have to change order in some way for the bug to appear. But not only that, it also has to include a nested element or component that has its own state. So if you don't have these 2 conditions in your code, it's going to seem like providing the index as the key is accurate. The problem with this is that code evolves, and eventually one of these 2 conditions might be true. And then you're stuck with a bug that's kind of weird because you didn't just write the key, you wrote that months ago, and now you can't connect the problem with the solution, right? So it's tricky. Anybody? Anybody? 90s kids? Okay, cool. All right, let's look at a quick example here. Time for a little bit of live coding. So here we have an array of Pokemon, and inside of the template, we're simply looping over those Pokemon. We're providing the index as the key. We're doing the bad thing, right? Well, over in the browser, this is exactly what this looks like. I hit the shuffle button, which simply reorders the array. And indeed, the Pokemon shuffle on the page. So yeah, Daniel, what's wrong? There's no bug here. Okay, well, let's go to another iteration of this where we have changed out just the Pokemon name being printed on the page to actually having a component for a Pokemon card. Right? We want to make things look a little bit nicer as we do in development. Our code bases evolve. Here's the thing about this Pokemon card. When I open that up, you'll notice that it does include some of its own local state. So in the first iteration of this component, this page, we only had the first condition met. Now we have both conditions met. We have things being reordered in the array, and now we have a component down inside of the v-for that keeps up with some of its own state. So let's see what the result of this is. Okay, I'm going to change here to this page. By the way, that little command palette, that's done with Nuxt UI. If you haven't tried out Nuxt UI yet, super, super cool tooling. Okay, so this is that page. Now what happens when I hit shuffle? Absolutely nothing at all. Okay? Now, I've seen a lot of people at this point, they're tempted to come into the Pokemon card component because the prop is actually changing. The name of the Pokemon prop is actually changing. They'll come in here and, watch the prop and then go and refetch the data, reset that local state, and it's just a bunch of unnecessary complication. Okay? The very easy and simple fix is just providing a proper key. Then everything works as expected, right? By the way, this nice little animation that's going on here, this is all thanks to the V-Auto-Animate directive, which is provided by a FormKit package. Really super easy way to add animations very quickly to your site. Okay? All right, so the key, no pun intended, to a proper key is describe the element itself. Don't describe the position of that element within the array. All right? Now, one of the questions I get all the time is, well, Daniel, what if I don't actually have something unique? Now, 90% of the time you will have something unique. Your data is coming from a database, and so you have an ID, right? Well, if you just don't have an ID, you can, if you really want to, generate a unique ID in your code for it. And a really great way to do that is with crypto.random UUID. Okay, this works in all modern browsers. It's going to generate a unique ID. Now, the implementation you see in front of you here, though, is wrong. And this is what I see some people trying to do, is they will try to actually call the ID, actually generate the ID directly inside of the value for the key. The problem for this is every time the array changes, the unique ID is regenerated. So effectively, you're just getting rid of all the advantages of having Vue do that caching and patching in the first place. Okay? So the result of that, of generating the ID like that, is that every time I hit shuffle, everything re-renders, all of my data is refetched. It's just no good, right? So instead of generating it actually in the key, what you should do instead is generate the ID once at the point in time you create the array. Okay, then this is stable throughout the life of the array, and we can just do Pokemon.id here, and this works. Cool. All right. So another mistake I see people make with using the key is that they think it's actually just useful for v4. It's not. The key is useful anytime you want to force a DOM element to re-render. Let's take a look at a quick example of that. All right, so in this case, I have a counter component. It uses useInterval to tick away a number every 1 second, okay? Much like the timer that's staring at me in the face right now. And it's wrapped in a transition component. And this transition component is powered by this CSS down here, which I guarantee you is correct. Now, yes, take my word for it. All right, but this is the result. No transition. That sucks, right? So what's my problem? Well, my issue is that Vue is just patching the actual node, text node of the div. It's not replacing the entire div element, and so two div elements never exist on the page at the same time in order for you to transition between them. So how do we tell Vue, how do we force Vue to re-render that div per number? Well, we give it a key. Okay, so in this case, I'll do key equals, and the thing unique per number is the number itself, right? And now we have a really nice fade transition. Awesome. Mistake number two. Mistake number two. Can anybody tell me what is wrong with this code snippet? Yell it out. It's not reactive. That, for such a large auditorium, I can actually hear y'all really well. That's great. I can't see you at all, but I can hear you. Okay, exactly right. This relies on a non-reactive dependency in order to get the value of this computed prop. Now, a lot of us, what do I mean by that? Well, no matter how many times I set this value in local storage, the computed prop is never going to update. I was guilty of this on multiple occasions as a junior developer, and I had no idea what was going on. The thing is if we were to do this right here, all of us know this is wrong, right? We know we can't do this, but for some reason we lose our minds when it comes to working with browser APIs and reactivity. We suddenly just forget that the actual reactivity thing is a thing. And so I see people do this with local storage. I see people do this with like the date object. I see people do this with DOM element properties. All right, you make some DOM update and you expect your reactive data to retrigger based on that change. And of course, we usually do this. We usually make this mistake in the context of a much larger computed prop, right, or watcher or whatever. It's not something as simple as the slides I just show you. They're just there to show the point. So what's the solution? Well, the easiest solution that I've found is when you're working with these browser native APIs and you're working with Vue, just reach for Vueuse. Okay, it's basically a reactivity wrapper around all those browser APIs, among other things. I do have an example in place for this. I don't think we're going to have time for it. Suffice it to say, I will share that after on my Twitter account if you want to take a look at that particular example. All right, so let's dive in now to mistake number 3. Can anybody tell me what is wrong with this code snippet? Yes. Yes, exactly right. Okay, so let me set up the scenario here. You've got a page of blog posts. Someone is paging through them. There's page 1, there's page 2, so on and so forth. And the post variable here it represents the posts that are currently showing on the page, right? And the load more function is what you call when you're ready to hit page 2 or page 3 or whatever. The problem with this is that replacing that entire reactive array is going to kill the reactivity. It actually even says this directly inside of the Vue.js docs. It's just that some of us don't read. Guilty as charged. All right, so let's take a look at some code. Woo, that is a file to look at. I tell you what. Okay, here we go. So we're going to take a look at replacing state here. So right here we have basically the exact same thing set up as you saw in the slide. I'm just hard coding some new posts in here instead of fetching it from an API. But the point is the same. We're setting our post reactive array here to the post coming from the API. Okay, let's see what this looks like in the browser. Okay, I hit load more, this runs the function. Sure enough, the posts don't change. The reactivity is killed, it's lost, the page does not update. We're still good? Okay, cool. All right, so what is the solution for this? Well, if we change this to ref, and then of course update this to .value, then now everything works swimmingly. The moral of the story here is if you need to replace all your state, you need to be using ref instead of reactive. However, remember that little tricky slide earlier? Yeah, sometimes it's not as simple as this. Sometimes the bug is a lot more subtle. So let's take a look at a case that is also probably pretty common. Now we have a loading variable defined, and at the very beginning of our function, our load more function, we set the value of loading to true, then we do our loading, we do our replacing of post, and then we set loading to false again. Okay? Let's see what this looks like in the browser. Notice though, let me come back here. Notice though, we are still doing the bad thing. We're still doing reactive, right? And then we're replacing it all together right here on line 11. All right, so number 3, this is that example right there. I hit load more, and the post actually did change that time. What? I thought we just saw that this doesn't work. Can you tell what's happening here? Say again? Yes, that's exactly right. So the VIF relies on the loading variable. And so the re-render is actually triggered not based on the post reactive data, but instead on the loading reactive data. And so we have this false security that our replacement of the post actually works. Now, I'm able to catch that this is not working fairly easily because I've also created a computed property that also relies on post, and you'll notice the number post hasn't updated to 3. Okay, but maybe I didn't have this on the page. That sucks, right? Okay, so the moral of the story here is really we should just be using ref everywhere. Not reactive, exactly right. We should just be using ref everywhere. In fact, that is not just me talking. That is actually now the recommendation of the official Vue.js docs. It says in the composition API, the recommended way to declare reactive state is using the ref function. Great. Oh, and one more reason to use ref everywhere, which there are multiple reasons, but this is one I just discovered the other day and I thought was very interesting. The default watcher depth is actually different between ref and reactive. Did you know that? Let's take a quick look at an example of that because it quite surprised me when I first saw this. So if I come here to this example, we have some reactive data, an object being declared here. It's got a username and password field or property on it. Then we are watching that reactive data and calling alert whenever that data changes. Then down here in the template, we've got a V model that is bound to data.username. So here's my question. Do you think the alert will fire when I type in the input? Let's try. Let's see. All right, typing, and sure enough, it does. Even though we've got an object, even though we're watching an object, and we don't have the deep option included, the alert still fired. Wow, that blew my mind the first time I saw it. I thought that can't be right. But it actually is. So with ref, you have to include the deep option. Otherwise, the alert is not going to fire. So this is just one more reason. Make things consistent for yourself. Make things easier for yourself. Just use ref everywhere. All right, great. Mistake number 4. And this is the last mistake we're going to talk about today. So can anybody tell me what is wrong with this snippet? Go ahead and yell it out when you have the answer. Exactly right. All right, right up here at the front. Mutating props. I don't have anything to give away. There's no prize for a right answer. Mutating props. Okay, cool. Let's take a look at a few examples of mutating props, because once again, sometimes it's very obvious that you can't do this. Other times, there's a little tricky nuance that you have to make sure you look out for. All right, so example number 4 here, I have a piece of data defined inside of script setup. I've got a V model on that data going into some kind of custom input, and then that input itself has code that looks a lot like what you saw on the slide. Okay? It has a model value prop, and then we're calling vModel directly on that model value. Let's see what that looks like if we try to open it up in the browser. Whoop. Okay, great. I immediately know that I have an issue. It says vModel cannot be used on a prop because local prop bindings are not writable. This is perfect. This is a super great user experience. So now I can come in here, I could create some kind of, maybe computed prop that has a getter and a setter. Maybe I could do some kind of juggling that, emits an event whenever this data here changes. However, in Vue 3.3 and above, there's actually a really solid solution that is really, really straightforward. So now instead of defining model value as a prop, now I'll call define model, okay, and set its return to the value, whoops, I can't spell, and set its return to the value that I want to mutate, okay? So what this does now, and I'm going to have to find it again because the error kept me from actually going to the page. Let me, whoops, sorry y'all. That's number 4, mutating props, there it is. Great, so now this actually works. The top line here is in the parent. This is me typing in the child, right? So this all works as expected, but now we're no longer mutating the prop. Now we're actually accepting the prop down in through define model, and then we're emitting update model value automatically without all the ceremony. And it's nice, short, and sweet. All right. However, just like all our other examples, things get a little bit trickier, right? Let's take a look at another example where we have mutated a prop. So in this case, this here is what I want to look at. In this case, I have a piece of data defined. It is an object. We're no longer working with a primitive. We're working with an object. And then I have a form component down here that expects some data. It expects the data that is this format right here. Okay? I've got some TypeScript set up. It is expecting that. Okay? And then on submit, and only on submit of the form, do I want to update the value of the data in my parent. I don't want them to be tied as soon as the data in the child transforms. I don't want it to immediately emit something, right? So we can't use define model in this case. So how do I accomplish this? Well, if I open up my form component here, you'll see what's happening. I've created a types of prop here. That's where we define what that object should look like. And then I have set define props. So essentially, this data and username is now a prop. Okay? We've also defined emits. So it emits a submit event. And then down here, what we've done is we've bound data.username to an input, and we've bound data.password to an input. So this is the login form. Let's see what this looks like in the browser. Okay, this is the data in the parent. This is that child component. I start typing, and immediately it begins to update in the parent. So where's this warning Vue? Where's this warning that I just got in the last example? It doesn't exist here. It didn't tell me very apparently that I have an issue, because I do. I am directly mutating the data in the parent, right? Well, the thing is I'm not actually mutating data, and so that little compile time error doesn't exist for me. So when it comes to passing objects and props, you have to be a little bit more careful, right? Well, how could I get around that? So what I could do is I could clone the data somehow, or excuse me, I could just set that data to a local variable. And in that case, I am no longer mutating the prop itself, right? And then emit some kind of event here. So when we're emitting the submit event, now I want to emit the local data instead of the prop. So now you can see in our component, we're only mutating the local data. We're not mutating the prop data anymore. However, if I go back to my page here, no last pass. If I go back to my page here, it's still actually updating in the parent. And this is because objects are passed by reference as opposed to being passed by value. Okay, so this is an issue I actually ran into a ton when I first started developing with Vue. What me and my friends, we came up with a name for it actually. We said Vue's just being overreactive. Silly Vue. And it took me a long time to realize what I was actually doing. So we need to try to avoid this. It causes unexpected bugs. The solution is to simply clone your data. You could do something like JSON stringify and then JSON parse again. There's also other solutions out there, libraries. I think there's like a structured clone now inside of the browser. I tend not to reach for it. I had an issue with it one time and I gave up. So this is the issue though. You want to clone your data in some form or fashion. Okay. Now notice the data in the parent does not change until I hit the login button. Perfect. This is great. So as you can see, mutating props, while it looks fairly straightforward to avoid, there are some times where you might get in trouble and not even realize it. Awesome. So all the mistakes I talk about in this talk actually come from a course that I helped complete with Vue School. It's called Common Mistakes in Vue.js and How to Avoid Them. It's a free course we offer at Vue School, and I highly recommend checking this out. There's no reason not to. We talk about some of the things that we talked about in this talk. Of course, a lot of other things too that I think are really interesting. We cover topics like prop drilling, forgetting to clean up your manual event listeners, calling composables in the wrong place, using VHTML with user-provided data, and a whole lot more. This is a super valuable course. All right, that's all for my talk, y'all. Thank you very much. I should have added this last little line before I... I'll take 2 applauses. That's great. Make sure to do it at the end again. That'd be awesome. So before I do leave you, I just wanted to mention we do have a sale at Vue School going on. It's special for the Vuejs Amsterdam conference. You can scan this QR code right here to get to that. It's 50% off a yearly or a lifetime plan for Vue School. We also have a new edition of our Vue.js masterclass coming out in the near future. We are currently actively working on developing this. The goal here was to provide a masterclass that was up to date with all the latest technologies and approaches to code in Vue.js. Namely, we're going to be using the composition API everywhere, no more options API in that course. We are going to be using Pina for state management. We're going to be using script setup and a lot of the latest tooling to make sure we're teaching Vue in the way that people write Vue today. Please stop by our booth. We have a couple of lovely Vue School team members out there ready to talk to you. Say, hey, I will be over there as well. And we have some cheat sheets available there, TypeScript, Vue use, Pina cheat sheets, I believe, t-shirts, all sorts of fun swag, stickers, and all that kind of good stuff. After the talk, I will tweet out my slides and the code with the examples that I shared. So if you would, give me a follow, Daniel Kelly IO on Twitter. I will have those available for you all. Thank you so very much for your time. Now go code some awesome things, of course, with Vue.js.